You need to be optimistic about the global impact that the tariffs are going to have. You can't be putting your head in the sand about this. It isn't something that's just going to happen to the other guy. No, you will be impacted by this. Welcome to the Heartland Multifamily Show, the shorter, more profitable path to multifamily ownership and investing. Everybody, it's Darren Garman, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Heartland Multifamily Show, the place for all things multifamily. And hey, welcome again to another show. I'm really excited about talking to you about really kind of a boring thing. We're going to be talking about tariffs and the tariff impact, especially when it comes to not only your business, but also I'm going to go into the weeds just a bit when it comes specifically to multifamily owners, operators, managers. So it's not the most exciting thing for us to be discussing, but it is a necessary thing for us to be talking about. Let's go ahead and let's get a couple of things straight right out of the box here. I could pull up a definition of tariffs and all of that, but let's just say that a tariff is really essentially a tax on goods and services being imported and exported. What we can be expecting and what has already started is goods that are coming into the country. They're going to be paying the manufacturers a higher tax on being able to bring in those goods. And theoretically, what's to happen is though that tax revenue goes to our government and then goes into our economy. So that's what is supposed to be happening here theoretically. Okay, and I'm not going to go into the weeds on whether politically it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do or how should we do it or when should we. So I'm not going to go into that because at the end of the day, it's reality. And that's really the first thing I want to share with you in terms of the three things you need to know about the tariffs. So number one is reality check. They're here and they're coming and you need to be aware of it, especially if you think it's not going to impact you, because it is. So the first thing you need to do and understand is have the thought process and having the conversation, at least in your own mind, of how is this going to impact me? How am I going to be impacted by this? And by the way, let's just say you're an investor, you're not a business owner, you're also going to be impacted by this, especially if you invest in companies, in properties, and we're talking specifically multifamily here, of course, you're going to be impacted by it too. And so you can't be putting your head in the sand about this. That's my point. It isn't something that's just going to happen to the other guy. No, it's going to be happening to many people, and more than likely you're one of them. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, what am I going to do about it? What kind of planning do I need to be doing? What kind of thought processes or maybe even some systems do I need to be putting into place? Now, here's where it gets a little bit difficult because frankly, do you really know the exact ramifications you're going to have as a result of these tariffs, both positive or negative? No, we don't really know. But it is prudent for professionals like you and I to at least sit down and have the conversation with those around you, maybe other multifamily owners, maybe key members of your team, and have the conversation of, okay, guys, how are we going to be impacted by this? What do you think is going to happen? You've got to at least have something in process or at least in place in terms of, okay, here's what we're going to be doing. Here's what we think we need to be doing. And let's use a couple of examples. Okay, so let's go to multifamily. So I'm going to pick something really easy like heating and cooling equipment, furnaces, air conditioners, PTAC units, condensers, those kinds of things. You know as well as I do, many of those HVAC items are manufactured outside of the U.S. When it comes this summer, wintertime, whatever, where you've got to replace those air conditioning condensers. You've got to replace those boilers in the wintertime. You've got to replace those forced air furnaces. You can be looking at a pretty large increase in terms of what some of those items might cost. So that's a pretty easy example. But then you want to take that example now and apply it to a lot of other areas in your community or in your business. Okay, what areas could we be impacted by this, and what do we need to be doing about it? Okay, so that's two things. And I said there'd be three. Number three is communication. I talked about earlier that you can't really be surprised by this. Well, now's the time to have this conversation with not only your key team members, we talked about that before, but also your frontline people. So for example, with our communities, you can bet that we're having this conversation with our community managers, with our maintenance technicians, with our maintenance supervisor, with our HR people. We are having those conversations because that line of communication has to be open in terms of, guys, this could be coming down the road. You need to be aware of it. When you are doing everything from daily cares of life management of your multifamily communities, you might run into this. Daily cares of life maintenance with your multifamily communities, you might be running into this. You see, these are the conversations that I think you really need to be having. And again, this doesn't just apply to multifamily. It applies to other businesses. And by the way, if you're an investor, I mean, these are the things that you need to be aware of in terms of how it might impact you positively, possibly, okay, negatively, okay. You need to be aware of it as well and be thinking through this. And if there's any conversations you need to be having with people. So for example, if you're a limited partner and you've got other folks that you need to be having conversations with about at least letting them know that this is in the hopper, so to speak. Again, I think a very, very good idea. So I covered the three main things that the multifamily, I call them multifamily tariffs. You know, these three strategies that you need to be implementing now. And so far, you know, on the show with these three things, you know, it's kind of been on the negative side of things, right? Okay, but keep in mind, one of the things that you want to try to really do here is have a really, really good attitude about this. This is coming to you in terms of a leadership quality you need to be having about this. You need to be optimistic about the global impact that the tariffs are going to have. Okay, so not only in terms of making things fair between the U.S. and other countries from a trade standpoint, but the global economic impact that this potentially could have for everybody. As a leader, you need to be explaining the vision of these tariffs. They're not out there just to make things more expensive. That's not the point. The point is the future positive economic impact that this can be having for everybody. Because A, like I said, it's reality. B, the people are going to be impacted and they're going to wonder, is this really going to be worth it? Is, you know, what's going on here? And there's going to be ramifications. But there needs to be a conversation also about, here's what's at the end of the road here, guys. Here's where we see this going. Here's where we see this one step back, 3 steps forward going. As a leader, the end goal here is to make things as good as possible globally from an economic standpoint for everybody. And that at least needs to be in the back of your mind as well when you're having these communications with the key people, either on your team or when they're having those communications with their residents. And even, and don't think that I'm not having these communications and this kind of conversation with the investors and my co-owners with the properties that we own. I'm having these conversations with them as well. Okay, so the 3 things, let's go ahead and let's hit them one more time. Number 1, reality. Make sure you understand you will be impacted by this. It's not going to be just the other guy. You're going to be impacted by this, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, a plan. What are you going to be doing? At least an outline of how you might be impacted and what kind of things should you or maybe shouldn't now as a result of that, and at least have a semblance of an outline put together as a result of that. And number 3, communication. Who do you need to be communicating with about tariffs with this? Is it your staff? Is it residents? Is it other business? Is it your vendors? Who else do you need to be having communication with regarding this? And then kind of the last thing I wanted to mention in there is the frame as a leader that you're approaching this with. How do you want to be presenting this in terms of where is this all going? Is this just a temporary rental hike because the prices are going up? What's the reason for this? What's behind it? And being able to have those kinds of conversations and effective communication as you go through the process. Okay, so appreciate you being on this episode of the Heartland Multifamily Show, the place for all things multifamily, including tariffs. All right, we'll see you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. If you want to get your hands on more great multifamily real estate content, make sure you click here. If you want to invest passively in great multifamily real estate, make sure you click here.